Welcome back to my channel. This is a video I wish I never had to make. In fact, one of the reasons it is not as timely as I could have easily made it is because every time I started thinking about writing the script, it just made me depressed. And it still does. I wish I could say the events it covers surprised me, but no, they didn't. My early videos avoided politics, even though I followed and debated politics for 65 years. Instead, I pointed to the tactics of internet trolls and pointed out they were using the same tactics as politicians and other powerful people. Well, sorry, but the politics have gotten so bad that I have to deal with them head on. The main focus of this video, and probably some future videos since there are multiple aspects to address, is the assassination of Charlie Kirk and, just as important, maybe even more so, the reactions to it. There were the loony responses, like the guy on MSNBC who immediately said this.
We don't know if this was a supporter shooting their gun off in celebration.
Typical media bias. Present an extremely unlikely possibility while ignoring the far more likely possibility, since it was known that Kirk and other conservative speakers had to bring lots of security with them, that the shooting was deliberate, which, you know, it actually was. It wasn't just that. There were others in the media who claimed, we don't know why, even after we already knew the things the assassin wrote and said, which made his motivations quite clear that he was on board with the hate rhetoric from the Democrats on issues. I've seen this many times from media and politicians who immediately jump to conclusions if, say, a policeman shoots a black man. But they act like they are ignorant of facts if it is obviously an attack committed by a leftist. So they keep saying, we don't know why. Remember, this isn't just self-serving politicians. This is important people in national media who turn out to be untrustworthy. It's almost like having a Pravda press. Another absurd reaction is this from Nancy Pelosi.
People don't have any intention of saying something that's going to lead to something dangerous, but we cannot take responsibility for the minds that are out there and how they hear it.
Really? When has any Democrat made a similar statement about rhetoric from a conservative they don't like? In those cases, the Democrat left declares the rhetoric does lead to violence and it is our fault. Heck, they even say the speech is violence because they are either stunningly stupid or they hope you are. Keep in mind, Pelosi accused Trump of the insurrection on January 6, 2021. Besides the fact it wasn't an insurrection, why isn't Pelosi applying the same standard in that case? The Democrats object to Trump saying this on January 6th.
We fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
But that is common in politics. Words like fight in themselves are no more serious in everyday politics than they are when telling your football team to go out and fight. If that was a call for insurrection, then Democrats have done the same many times. Actually, as you'll see, the Democrats say much worse things. Let me take a moment to run through just some of them as quickly as I can.
Think Donald Trump is a fascist?
Yes, I do.
No one has ever been more dangerous to this country than Donald Trump, and he is a fascist to his core.
Which can do nothing but motivate violence to supposedly stop fascism. They aren't subtle.
We're in a war right now.
We are at war.
So you have to be willing to do whatever is necessary in order to save the country.
And that's why the gloves are off.
Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic.
I don't see any restraint at all, especially when they say to do whatever is necessary. Pretty sure that would justify assassination attempts to many on their side.
I just don't even know why there aren't uprisings all over the country, and maybe there will be when people realize that this is a policy.
But you can only push people so far. And then they start to take matters into their own hands.
This is all too typical. Sure, she also said something about violence being bad, but then essentially say it will happen anyway.
And what I think is really important, and what the American public want, is for us to bring actual weapons to this bar fight. This is an actual fight for democracy.
Well, so far, at least 3 people have brought actual weapons. And that's just the assassinations. There's plenty of other violence going on from the left.
Sure that they stay down and kick them when they're down because they deserve it.
Somehow, I don't think that is advocating calm debate.
We're here today in the hopes that you will see the light. But if you do not see the light, we will bring the fire.
Bring the fire? Gee, I wonder how radicals on the left will interpret that.
You see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
This is called intimidation, which, besides being a tactic used by actual fascists historically, tends to also escalate into violence anytime it is applied. Sure sounds far more like incendiary and threatening if they don't get their way than what I hear from conservatives. Besides, Trump specifically made his intentions clear with this.
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
Oh, doesn't sound like encouraging an actual insurrection to me. In fact, it was all about free speech. I thought the Democrat left liked that. And so what if he also said he felt the election was unfair? Al Gore tried to steal the election with a rigged recount in Florida, and even when they still didn't get enough votes, the Democrats said that if the entire state was recounted, they would have won. Which is, if you actually think about it, the same thing as saying that George W. Bush wasn't the legitimately elected president. And yes, the Democrats did say that. But Trump can't speak the same way? I guess freedom of speech is reserved for the left. In any case, go back to Pelosi's statement saying they aren't responsible for their rhetoric while they apply different standards to conservatives. Not only does the left not hold themselves responsible for their own hateful rhetoric, they'll actually try to blame it on the victims of their hate. Like this, also from MSNBC, and talking about Charlie Kirk.
And I think that's the environment we're in, that people just, you can't stop with these sort of awful thoughts you have and then saying these awful words and not expect awful actions to take place.
Think about that. First, he does what I'll be detailing later in this video, making nasty claims about what Kirk says, yet not giving any examples to back it up. The media knows they have already convinced their audience that Kirk used hate speech, so they can just run with that totally false assumption, knowing most of their audience has already been fooled. Second, as soon as someone says something remotely like, "What can you expect?" you are blaming the victim, and at the same time, essentially saying they can understand why someone would kill him. The Democrat left knows this. After all, they always objected if someone dared point out that how a woman dressed could encourage rape. How dare someone blame the victim? Okay, fine. But again, why are they so inconsistent? Of course, it also sends a message to all conservatives that if you dare say things that disagree with the left, you shouldn't be surprised if the same happens to you. It's pure intimidation from those who lie when saying they support free speech. For decades, the Democrat left has called the opposition racist or sexist, rather than debate the issues. But with Trump, they have gotten much worse in ways that lead to violence, calling Trump and others fascists, Nazis, Hitler, etc. I well remember a standard reaction from Democrats for many years. If someone warned that some policy was like Nazis or fascists would do, they would declare that whoever first brings up a reference to Nazis or fascists had already lost the debate. Yet we now see the Democrats do it themselves, all the time, and doing so to still avoid debating the actual issues. Remember, debate was Kirk's primary goal. Of course, lots of people would think violence to stop another Hitler is appropriate, so the results of their rhetoric was entirely predictable. Every leftist fruitcake will be thinking it would have been great if someone killed Hitler, and so you have two serious assassination attempts on Trump and a successful one on Kirk, who is just using his free speech to debate. How about Jasmine Crockett's weasel words?
Me disagreeing with you, me calling you, I want to be Hitler, all those things are like not necessarily saying go out and hurt somebody.
That's insane. But note she doesn't even say don't hurt somebody, just not necessarily, as she continues to use inflammatory, hateful rhetoric. The reaction from the Democrat left has been as evil as the actual attack. As anyone can see, they just keep using the same hateful rhetoric even after the assassination. Second, they make comments, including from news media, that follow one of two lines. One is saying something like, "What did he expect would happen?" which I submit means they are more interested in sending the message that you better shut up, or what do you expect to happen to you too? The other, even worse, was all those who said Charlie at least partly deserved it. There was even a poll of Democrats that said something like 47% of them thought Charlie at least partly had it coming. Remember, Charlie Kirk only tried to debate the issues. And he repeatedly said that when we stop talking to each other, violence happens. So when anyone insinuates it is his own fault or it was justified, they're literally saying they don't want those who disagree with the left to have free speech. Well, the Democrat left decided talk was bad. So, surprise, we got violence. We have just about reached the level of the most extreme radical Muslims who think exterminating all Jews is justified. That's what happens when the left, over many decades, have methodically taken over education, news media of all types, and even entertainment media. It steadily just becomes indoctrination. But let's be fair and look at the reasons given for saying Kirk deserved it. Well, first problem is when you listen to these critics, they're just ranting as they restate their opinion over and over with no substance. Usually they don't actually provide examples. Same as when they call people racist. Remember, repetition doesn't equal truth. However, sure, sometimes we do get examples. Even then, usually it is just another claim with a very vague reference. Like if I called someone a racist because that person said he didn't like some black guy. But you don't get the actual quote with the context, so you can't make a proper evaluation. It's important that you realize how empty most of their rants are, because I suspect most don't even notice. But I want to focus on the most common actual examples they have used against Kirk. By now, it shouldn't surprise you that they are wildly out of context. First, we have the one that said Kirk was racist. Why? Because Kirk said he didn't like the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
We should be clear about who Charlie Kirk was. A man who believed that the Civil Rights Act that granted Black Americans the right to vote was a mistake. His rhetoric and beliefs were ignorant, uneducated, and sought to disenfranchise millions.
Well, AOC is both ignorant and leaving out context. Ignorant because it wasn't the Civil Rights Act that gave blacks the right to vote 61 years ago. That was the 15th Amendment 150 years ago. But her spewing of hate is all based on ignoring what Kirk really said in context. Here are some examples of Kirk's view on the Civil Rights Act.
Do you support the Civil Rights Act?
In spirit, but not how it's written.
Why?
It's too broad. For example, they're using the Civil Rights Act to put men in locker rooms like Riley was in.
So what would you change about the Civil Rights Act?
I wouldn't make it as broad. I would make it much more crisp and concrete. I think you should have a one-page bill that says that racial discrimination based on race is illegal and will not be tolerated in the United States of America.
Oh, wow. So Kirk is all for actual civil rights. He does disapprove of how the bill, as written, does other things. Now, you might like those things, but that is why we should debate. You are not justified in calling Kirk a racist. In fact, Kirk sums that up quite nicely here.
White supremacist is somebody who takes advantage and believes that they are higher than everybody else.
Do I believe that?
I have no idea.
Okay, exactly. And so there's no evidence whatsoever, and yet people go around sloppily saying, you're a racist, you're a white supremacist. It is so destructive to our dialogue. It's destructive to us coming together as a country, and there's nothing to support it whatsoever.
Again, Kirk not only supports civil rights, he was just using his free speech to debate people who disagree with him while warning that these false attacks are destructive to debate. He was literally assassinated for wanting open debate. And so many politicians, news media people, and others on the left are either fine with it or they are willingly ignorant of the kind of person Kirk was. His critics stirred up the hate that led to the assassination, and they are still doing it. Next, we have critics saying they have no empathy for Kirk because Kirk said he didn't like empathy himself. Well, context again. Kirk actually said,
Bill Clinton in the 1990s, it was all about empathy and sympathy. I can't stand the word empathy, actually. I think empathy is a made-up New Age term that it does a lot of damage, but it is very effective when it comes to politics. Sympathy I prefer more than empathy. That's a separate topic for a different time.
Again, while you may love the word empathy, there is nothing wrong with what Kirk said, especially when he said it was a topic for another time. So you should check before you make assumptions. Besides, he says he prefers the word sympathy. So there is no problem here. Well, other than how taking Kirk out of context effectively spreads a false impression. Kind of a hateful thing to do. By the way, when I searched for that clip on empathy, almost every link I found totally left out the context. So it was actually hard to find the truth. That should scare you. Next was a claim that Kirk is anti-Semitic. If you've listened to Kirk much at all, it's obvious he was a big supporter of Jews. Interestingly, Rush Limbaugh was as well, and was also accused of being anti-Semitic. Heck, so was Trump, even though he has Jewish grandchildren. For leftists who don't seem to mind all the anti-Semitism on college campuses and give their support to radical people in or from the Middle East who would want to exterminate Jews, this particular accusation is not only sick, but so blatant that how can anyone miss it? Next was Charlie's claim that it was worth it to have some gun deaths every year. Well, let's follow the context again. He's talking about why we have a Second Amendment and then talks about the price.
You will never live in a society when you have an armed citizenry and you won't have a single gun death. That is nonsense. It's drivel. But I think it's worth it. I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights.
The key words are to protect our other God-given rights. The Second Amendment doesn't stand alone. Much like free speech, if you lose that, you'll eventually lose your other rights as well. In a future video, we'll examine who really doesn't want free speech. Maybe you're one of those people who foolishly say, if we save just one life, it's worth it. Okay, then let's look at the context that Kirk said and see if you can maintain that view.
Having an armed citizenry comes with a price. And that is part of liberty. Wow. Driving comes with a price. 50,000 people die on the road every year. That's a price. You get rid of driving, you'd have 50,000 less auto fatalities. But we have decided that the benefit of driving, speed, accessibility, mobility, having products, services, is worth the cost of 50,000 people dying on the road. Wow. So we need to be very clear that you're not going to get gun deaths to zero.
So unless you are also going to call for the banning of automobiles, you can't use the if we save just one life, it's worth it argument. Then we have the rage against Kirk and others by those who don't understand science. If we say a man cannot become a biological woman, we are labeled haters. But it's science, that XX versus XY chromosome thing. No matter how you dress, no matter what operations you have or drugs you take, the basic biology doesn't change. But the left will claim this means Kirk hates trans or others in the LGBTQ ranks. Well, try again.
So you do not hate the LGBT community,
No,
and Turning Point is not against LGBT.
No, how could I hate that which I have a heart for?
Thank you.
And I might not agree at that for some of the lifestyle choices that some people make, but of course not. And if someone said, Charlie, what's your view on marriage? I say, I believe marriage is between one man and one woman. But if you ask me, what do I have hate in my heart for somebody that doesn't choose the lifestyle that I believe that God laid out in the scriptures? Of course not.
You see, disagreement is not hate. Though I would say that insisting someone must agree with you or you can be punished for wrong thoughts is pretty darn hateful. You see, the Democrat left really wants to censor disagreement. I saw Kirk many times interact with trans men and women courteously, at least as long as they were doing the same. He has no obligation to blindly agree with them. So, none of the attacks I saw match what Kirk actually said or did. Yet most people think they do, at least the vast majority of Democrats. They've been lied to by people who should either know better before attacking or by people who are knowingly lying. Yet, since the lies have worked, we get an assassination of someone who just wanted to debate with anyone who disagreed with his views. That's the present state of the Democrat left, who continue with the hateful rhetoric. And just to show how ridiculous they can be, there was a pastor who actually said in response to the assassination, "If you live by the sword, you die by the sword." Kirk simply debated. He used no sword, yet someone else essentially did to silence him. This is a good time to let Charlie talk about what he was trying to do and why.
When people stop talking, really bad stuff starts. When marriages stop talking, divorce happens. When church starts happening, they fall apart. When civilization stops talking, civil war ensues. When you stop having a human connection with someone you disagree with, it becomes a lot easier to want to commit violence against that group. People stop talking with each other because they lose their humanity. What we as a culture have to get back to is being able to have reasonable disagreement where violence is not an option.
The Democrat left has stopped talking and are committing violence, and it led to the death of someone who was just trying to debate. Thanks for watching, and don't let the trolls stop you from speaking out.